Welcome back to my channel for a short Leica episode about the new firmware 4.1.0 for the Leica Q3 28, Leica Q3 43 and Leica Q3 Monochrom, which you don't find here on the table. And it's a little bit of a special filming situation here, because on that wall here I will get in about a week my air condition, and they had to drill holes into the wall. And you already see here all kinds of things coming out of the wall, which will be used for getting the condensed water, for instance, out of the studio, electric connections, of course. And I don't want to film in this direction. I think this is ugly, but I wanted to show you why I'm actually changing direction here of filming. I will film in this direction today towards the other side of the studio, and will do all my recordings here on the table. So just that you know what's going on. I didn't change location, it's the same studio, but I have currently work going on here for my new air condition, because the summer will very likely be as hot as last year. So all in, I don't think this is the ideal perspective for my presentation of firmware 4.1.0, but for the time being, it is what it is. And the next couple of videos will go in this direction and not in the opposite direction. All right, so we have here on the table the Leica Q3 28. This one has still firmware 4.0.0. I'm going to show you in a moment. This here is the Leica Q3 43, already updated to firmware 4.1.0. And by the way, if you have not yet subscribed to my channel, please do so. Subscribe, hit the notification bell, support my work. Many thanks for that. All right. Let's quickly check where we are, and let's go into the Leica Q3 28 first. Oh, by the way, this is interesting. It comes here in terms of an error message at the first greeting to me when I switch it on. Several functions are not available using battery type BP-SCL4. Please use battery type BP-SCL6 for full functionality. Let's quickly check that. I would be very surprised if I have the wrong battery in here, but you never know. Let's quickly have a look here. Let's get this out here and let's have a look. And this is a BP-SCL6, as you can see here. So why does the camera say it's an SCL4, although I have an SCL6 here in the camera? That's very strange and happens to me from time to time. I personally believe that firmware 4.1.0 will fix that issue. But let's quickly check. I think here is the old firmware. So let's go to the very last page, camera informations, and you see firmware 4.0.0. That's what we have here. Let's look into the Q3 43. Switch it on. It's the first time I'm switching it on after the firmware update. I don't get a strange error message. And let's go to the very last page. And then we go here to camera information, and here we have 4.1.0. And the reason why I want to have it in this way is because I want to go now through everything we read in the release notes of the new firmware. We'll show you how it was previously on 4.0.0, and then show you what has changed to 4.1.0. That's at least the battle plan I have in mind when thinking about this video here. Let's get the troubleshooting section out of our way immediately, so we can basically ignore what's here in that section. And there are 2 points here. The camera would sometimes freeze when switching from a profile with Leica photos equal to off to a profile with Leica photos equal to on. This behavior was corrected. That is something I cannot show you here in the studio, because occasionally or sometimes freezing means it happens or it doesn't happen. But if you had this issue in the past, that should be fixed now with firmware 4.1.0. And the second is about color matrices. And it says the color matrices stored in DNG files were updated. As a result, color rendering in third-party software using these matrices for color presets is now improved. That's under troubleshooting. That's something I cannot show you, but we take note there have been improvements in this section. 2 bullets, and very likely everything is better now when shooting with a Leica Q3 camera. And as I said at the very beginning, this update has common joint release notes for all three: the Q3 28, the Q3 43 and the Q3 Monochrom. Now the first real point we can check out, and we'll do this in a moment, is here under improvements. And it says the warning message. By the way, you coincidentally just saw it when I switched on my Leica Q3 28. The warning message displayed upon power up of the camera, in which a BP-SCL4 rechargeable battery is used, was removed. So let's try it out. So what is BP-SCL4 in a battery nomenclature versus BP-SCL6? Let's have a look into the Q3 28 and let me show you. Let's open this up here. Let's get the battery out. Gentle push. Here we go. So this is, as you just saw before, an BP-SCL6. And this has, and I think this is down here, 2200 milliampere hours. The BP-SCL4 is this one, and they look from a distance exactly the same. And the BP-SCL4 used to be the standard battery for the SL system and the Q system before they came up with a higher capacity battery. And the BP-SCL4 here has 1860 milliampere hours. So we talk about 1860 versus here in the newer version 2200 milliampere hours. And so far, if you inserted these batteries here in the camera and you switched it on, you get a warning message. Let's have a look. Several functions are not available using battery type BP-SCL4. Please use the more modern battery. That's what it is saying. And this error message is supposed in firmware 4.1.0 no longer to slow you down, but be warned. The restriction in functions and capabilities is still there, and I'm going to show you. So here what we have is, for instance, let's go to 8K video recording. Let's swipe here quickly into the video mode, and then we go here to the video profiles. And then you will see here, let's go to the settings. Let's go to MOV. And you see here 8K is grayed out and cinematic 8K is also grayed out. The best you get in terms of video resolution and video codec is cinematic 4K and 4K, but the 8K video profiles are grayed out. And that's because this battery here is not as capable in terms of capacity in the way I showed you before. Only 1860 milliampere hours, here 2200 milliampere hours. And now if we insert this battery here again, the newer one, and switch it on, let's see if the error message still comes or the warning message. No, it's gone. Then we have 8K and cinematic 8K no longer grayed out. Have a look here, settings, MOV, and now we have it. You see, here is cinematic 8K, here is 8K, and this battery, the newer one, the higher capacity one, allows for these video profiles, whereas the older battery does not allow that. And now let's test this warning message, which appeared here when I inserted the older battery. In the newer firmware, should no longer pop up and slow you down in your workflow when you switch on the camera. So let's try this out. Let's have a look here. Let's get here the battery out. Let's get this one in. This is the BP-SCL4, so the old battery. Let's get it in. And we should now no longer see a warning message as we saw it with the older firmware. Let's switch it on. The warning message is gone. But coming back to my warning, 8K and cinematic 8K will be grayed out because the battery has not been improved. It's the same old battery. Let's go to video profiles here. Let's go here to settings, MOV, and you see 8K is grayed out, but it does no longer warn you up front. And that's basically the change we have from firmware 4.0.0 to 4.1.0. The warning message is gone, the restrictions are the same. The next change in the firmware is something people on the channel in comments below my videos called out in the past. And it says pictures taken in portrait format will now be displayed in full screen view. And I think we should try this out and compare if we take a portrait photo with the old firmware versus what happens if we take a portrait orientation photo with the new firmware. So here on the Q3 we have the old firmware. Let's quickly check the focusing settings. I'm on autofocus continuous. I'm here on tracking. And here I'm on human eye face body detection. Let's see if that works, and let's take a portrait orientation shot. Here we go. Jennifer's body is discovered and recognized. Let's take a shot. Now let's go into the play mode and let's see if we spot the difference. And here you see Jennifer is now here in portrait orientation. And if I rotate the camera, nothing happens here, right? And that's probably what people don't like, because if they want to see the preview, they very likely want to rotate the camera by 90 degrees, and then they get the full picture here, frame filling for their preview. Let's now see how this works with the Q3 So here on the Q3 we have the new firmware. Again, let's check the focusing settings. We have AFC, we have tracking, and we have body detection for humans. Let's see how this plays out. Here is Jennifer. It even recognizes here nicely the face, and you could also toggle between the eyes. Let's take the portrait orientation shot. Here we go. And let's go back here. Let's go into play mode. Comparing now the preview mode, you clearly see the improvement here on the Q3 in the new firmware. It's now frame filling, and here it's not frame filling. And that is the second difference we have between 4.0.0 and 4.1.0 here on the Q3 The next change we have is something I believe people also called out in comments from time to time. And I think this is a good change, what we find now here. It says a menu option was added in which focus peaking will be displayed only when focusing is done manually via the MF focus ring. And that is a good one, because if you're on autofocus, you don't necessarily need focus peaking. You can use it as an additional confirmation, but here you now have an option, and an option is always something you can decide whether you want to restrict focus peaking only to situations where you manually rotate the MF focus ring. So let's try this out. Let's start with the older firmware, and focus peaking is under Capture Assistance. And I've shown this in my many tutorials about the Q3 cameras various times on the channel. So we go to the menu, Capture Assistance, then let's choose here profile number 1. Let's go into the settings. Then we find here focus peaking settings. And you see we have here two options which we can steer: the color and the sensitivity. And I spoke about that in focus peaking tutorials in the past. Let's keep this menu screen open here. Let's have a look into the new firmware, and then let's put them side by side. So we go to Capture Assistance here, and this is here. We go to info profile number 1. We go to focus peaking activated settings. And if I put them side by side, you see the new firmware has 3 options. Here, the old firmware has 2 options. Color is the same, sensitivity is the same. But here we now can activate, and this is by default activated when you use the new firmware for the very first time, that you have focus peaking only if you manually turn the focus ring. And that is a good thing. So let's try it out here. Let's see. Let's switch the camera into manual mode for focusing. We have to push this, and then we can turn the focus ring here. And now I have focus peaking activated here with red color. If I turn the focus ring out of focus, and here you see the focus peaking kicking in, red color. Look here, you see it, red pixels. And this happens only if you rotate the focus ring, because if I go back now into autofocus mode, let's push this again, let's snap it in. And now here, if I autofocus, you see there is no red color indication that autofocus found actually focus. And that is typically what you want, because autofocus gets the job done for you automatically. You don't need focus peaking. You only need it if you switch into manual mode. And then it's here. Let me show you once more. And you see now the red color kicking in here. You see, here's autofocus. You see now the red pixels coming. And now Jennifer is sharp and in focus. Simple like that. The next feature says the currently selected autofocus mode will now be displayed in the form of an additional icon in the upper status bar. And I must confess, I don't find this change. So let's have a look into it. I have on both cameras now the setting we had before. Autofocus continuous, autofocus mode is on tracking, and autofocus detection is on human, eye, face, and body. And now let's go back into live view. Let's have a look what happens here. And let's check the upper status bar. First of all, we have aperture priority on both cameras. Then we have autofocus continuous, flash deactivated, auto white balance. We have drive mode single. We have LJPEG and LDNG. We have center weighted metering. Then we have the focal length, left hand side 28, right hand side 43. Leica standard is basically the look, and the battery symbol. And that's it. There is no change here. So I don't understand what Leica is talking about. Then I thought maybe if I half press the shutter button, I get an indication of the autofocus mode in that additional icon, what they are calling out here in the release notes. But it's not there, because whenever you half press the shutter button, all the information in the upper status bar actually vanishes. So the upper status bar, and you cannot change this in the info profiles, is always completely blended out as soon as you half press the shutter button. Now, my next hypothesis was maybe I do not fully understand what the nomenclature autofocus mode means, but it's actually pretty clear if you go to the menu. Let's go to the menu and into focusing. And then autofocus mode is pretty clear. That's only the switch between field and spot, zone and multi-field, and tracking. So I would expect that one of these icons is coming up now in the upper status bar, but that's not the case. Let's do it here. And you see there is still no icon in the newest firmware on the right-hand side on the autofocus mode, but that's what the release notes are promising. So I'm lost here. If you have an idea what this is all about, or alternatively, Leica, if you're seeing this, of course, I will notify my friends at the headquarters about this. I have no clue what they are talking about. I don't see it. I don't get it. And by the way, this feature would be nice because indeed, if we look here, let's actually get the Q3 28 with the former firmware out of the way. Indeed, if we look at the upper status bar, we miss an icon telling us what autofocus mode we are currently in, because it's not giving us that information. It talks about autofocus continuous, it talks about single drive mode, single shooting, it talks about metering, focal length, everything, but the autofocus mode, which is what I've activated here, field spot, zone, multi-field, and tracking, that is typically not done and visually presented by a symbol in the upper status bar, but actually by the form and shape of the focus field. And that I can quickly show you. So let's go into autofocus mode. And then if we go to field and spot, we get 4 corners here indicating a focus field. If we go into zone, we'll get the lines for zone. Let's have a look here. Zone and multi-field. And by the way, you can change the size of that. Also here, look here, I can make this bigger. I can make this smaller. And that's the way it works. So you always recognize the autofocus mode by the form and shape of your focus field. And going back into tracking, you have this also here. And now we are back to the representation of the focus field we had before, with an outer rectangle and an inner rectangle with 4 corners. And in this way, I think, in particular, because if you half press the shutter button, the upper status bar is anyway gone, Leica must have made a mistake here in the release notes, or they had the intention to give us an additional icon here, but it didn't find its way into the firmware. That's my conclusion. Anyway, if you have any idea what this is all about, drop me a comment. I'm really curious to understand. Of course, I will also reach out to Leica and ask them directly what this is all about. But for the time being, I am lost and don't know what this bullet in the release notes is really telling us. And then the last point here, where something changed, says in autofocus mode, tracking will display the frame in the color of the respective detection status. Tracking will remain inactive when no person or animal is detected. Green markers signify focus. This is a little bit cryptic, but I believe I can show you what they want to tell us. Let's explore systematically what this feature is all about. And as cryptic as it sounds, as important it is, as you will see in a moment. And I've now replaced Jennifer by an abstract subject. And it's a Laowa lens. It's 180mm focal length, f4.5. It's an apo macro lens. I want to bring this lens to the channel in the next weeks. and it's abstract. And because it's abstract, I deactivated in the menu under focusing the human detection. Let's have a look here. Let me show you on both cameras. We are still in autofocus continuous. We are still in tracking. And of course, I show you in a moment, you can track abstract subjects, but autofocus detection is switched off. If we go back into live view now by half pressing the shutter button on both cameras, you see here the two focus fields on the right-hand side on the new firmware and on the left-hand side on the old firmware. And the focus field in tracking mode has always an outer frame, which is solid lines, and an inner frame, which is indicated by 4 corners. You see this here, outer frame and inner frame. And the outer frame is solid line and the inner frame is indicated by corners. And now if I half press the shutter button, the focus will lock on to this Laowa lens. Have a look. And it's also moving, stretching a little bit, what have you, and tracking is activated. And by the way, tracking works for abstract subjects, no problem at all. Let me try to demonstrate to you without messing something up here. Is always a bit difficult. Let's go for the old firmware first and the Q3 28. Let's half press the shutter button and keep holding it. And now see how it is tracking the Laowa lens here. Very nice. Works like a charm. Let's do the same on the Q3 43. And then I have also covered this part of the presentation. Half pressing the shutter button, moving the lens, it's tracking the lens. So we track an abstract subject like a lens, and it's working really well. And we see the color scheme of these frames. The solid outer frame and the indicated by corners inner frame is in sync in terms of coloring. If I'm not half pressing the shutter button, it's all in white. If I half press the shutter button, it's the inner frame and the outer frame in green. So far, the two firmware versions are still in sync. The difference between the two firmware versions comes into play if I accidentally activate here human subject detection. And let's go here on the Q3 28 first. Let's go to human eye, face and body. Let's do the same here. And we go here to human eye, face and body. You see now the menu entries are in sync. This is exactly the same. We go back into live view and still the outer solid frame and the inner frame indicated by 4 corners, they have the same color and they are in white. But now watch what happens if I half press the shutter button on both of these cameras. You see that on the left-hand side on the Q3 28 with firmware 4.0.0, both frames, the outer solid frame and the inner frame with the 4 corners, they are both green. On the right-hand side, only the inner frame corners, they are green, the outer frame is white. And that is because the camera is giving you here a hint which can be very essential. The right-hand side camera with the new firmware is now making a distinction between finding focus, and you see the inner 4 corners, they are green, but it makes me aware that what I'm trying to track here is not a human being, although in the focusing settings, I've activated human eye, face and body detection. And that distinction was not there on the former firmware because here everything is green, the outer frame and the inner 4 corners. Here, only the inner 4 corners are green, telling me that yes, it's abstract, but I found focus nevertheless. But be careful, you want to track a human being, and this is not a human being, but an abstract subject, and that's why the outer frame is white. And here you don't get that hint, both frames are green. That's actually a very interesting new feature, and I should say I really like it because it separates finding focus from the detection feature, whereas here it looks like everything would be okay, although I'm now starting to track something which is not a human being, but before I activated human detection here in the menu. All right, that's it. That's my presentation and interpretation of the new firmware 4.1.0 for the Leica Q3 cameras. I will now also update my Leica Q3 28 and the Q3 Monochrom, and then I'm basically up to date on all of my 3 Q3 cameras. If you liked that presentation, please don't forget to drop me your thumbs up. Stay tuned on my channel, there's always more to come. Thanks for watching, stay safe and healthy, and of course, peace out.